It is remarkable how many people have walked into walls because they are too focused on something in the badge that they don't realize that there is a wall back there. I don't know if you remember when like smartphones first came out, we were walking into walls because we were paying too much attention to our phones.
All right, we are at Replay, and we're here with Shai, who is one of my teammates at Temporal, and we are going to talk about all the things related to a really cool thing you've been working on for the company, for Replay. Would you like to tell us what it is you've been working on?
I mean, I'm just one part of the team. I think the first person on that team is the only reason that I'm the one on camera, but like this has been a gauntlet is the word that has been thrown around internally, and we only managed to get this thing shipped because so many people here stepped up to help, and I guess I should explain the thing that I'm alluding to.
You're talking about it. We're leading up to it.
Yes.
Basically,
no, sorry, if you can't tell, I'm very low. I've been very busy in the last couple of days. So at the end of our final keynote this morning, we gave away a hackable badge. And so this is a fully programmatic badge that was designed by us. We built all the firmware. We hired a hardware consultant to help us get it produced and run us through manufacturing. I flew to China literally a week ago as of the recording, which I guess you won't know since this is a recording whenever this goes out. And I'm still jet lagged from being in China, if I'm being quite frank, to like oversee the manufacturing and the production and like that whole process to get it in our developers' hands for like the coolest swag drop ever at Replay today.
Well, and let me step us back and say, like, what inspired you to do this to begin with?
Yeah, so our CMO Claire has wanted to do a hackable badge for a long time.
Yeah.
And Candace, our head of design, has been wanting to have Replay run on Temporal is like how we call it internally. And Candace was like, we can build incredible software. Like we are really good at this stuff, and also like we should use our product. And so like the entirety of Replay is running on Temporal. We built the check-in, we built the registration, all of that triggers workflows and activities. And this is meant to be an extension of that. How do we get it so people can deploy Temporal in new ways? And like, how can they leverage Temporal in new places? And, the keynote is about sharing new things. And this is part of it, but yeah, the ask was like, how do we put something really cool? How do we build a programmable badge? Like, how do we get something with Temporal branding into our attendees' hands? And how do we get Temporal on it? And that ended up being something we managed to figure out a little too late to get on this version of the badge. So the badge doesn't actually have any native Temporal stuff on it.
Not yet.
Not yet, but I have plans. So if I get to do this again, I have plans.
You have plans. Plus, you can still update the software. Like you can plug it in and play with it.
We've pushed like 4 firmware updates today already. So if anyone has been by the help desk, they probably have had someone offering to update their badge, and we'll flash the new firmware. And one of our attendees made a Tamagotchi game.
Oh, wow.
And they did it entirely.
Already?
Yeah, she did it entirely in MicroPython. She's also been like just started helping us with the project as well. She's like a really experienced hardware hacker. That's all as we were getting things set up and managed to figure out our secret project and just jumped in to help. And she built a Tamagotchi, and it's really fun. And so it's just in the firmware now. We just dropped it in, and anyone who goes and gets their badge updated at the help desk will get that new app. And like we're planning on fully open sourcing the whole thing. So
nice.
The KiCad files, the C-level firmware, the Python, like all of it, and anyone with a badge will be able to go grab one and like do some cool stuff with it. And like if it's good and they submit a pull request and it's cool, we'll accept it and we'll merge it into the real like the production or the deployed firmware, I guess. I don't want to call it production firmware, but the full firmware that everyone gets. So.
Okay, so you had the idea. You were excited about the idea. Like, what can you step me through a couple of the different steps that led to the official launch that happened today?
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back to like my college years.
When you were born?
No, not that far. Not that far, unfortunately. My college years, I used to go to DEF CON a lot, which I know you and I have spoken about DEF CON.
Yeah.
And like DEF CON, the era of DEF CON I was going through, there was this guy named Lost who would design all of the badges.
They were pretty cool.
And he would alternate doing a physical badge, which would be full of puzzles and cryptography ciphers, and you can solve the puzzles, and like the first team or group to solve the badge challenge would essentially get a black badge, which is DEF CON's like you get in for life, like kind of thing. And they have a bunch of these black badge challenges around DEF CON. And like if you see someone wearing a black badge, they're probably really good at something. So, or have done something to really contribute to that community. The closest I ever got was 30 minutes behind a first place team. But yeah, like they alternate this physical badge, and then there's a digital badge, so like a programmable badge where like they do infrared things between each other, or it's just an exposed circuit board with lights. And they've gotten more and more complicated as that event has gone on. I think last year's, it looks like a Game Boy Color game. Like it feels like you are playing Pokemon as you work around the world, and it's got like all of this cool stuff on it. And like it is a very complex product that it's not made by Lost anymore, but it's made by someone else. But like it's still really impressive, and I think the gold standard of like hackable badges. And so that's where I got exposed to the culture of this. And I've wanted to do something like this my whole career. I know Twilio has done it at Signal, and they used the Raspberry Pi as a platform, the Raspberry Pi Zero, and it's just soldered onto a PCB board. So you can see the Raspberry Pi, and it's a really cool thing. And then GitHub Universe has been doing badges for like 1 or 2 years. And yeah, the opportunity came up for me to do it at Temporal, and I'm like, yes, absolutely, I would love to do this. This would be really, really cool if we can pull it off. And
nice.
It turns out 4 months is not long enough to pull it off. If we ever do it again, we need a little more time. So
possibly, but maybe you've learned enough that it will be faster next time, or maybe AI can do it for you next time.
Yeah. So what I was saying to people was I could make one of these by myself, and when I say one of them, I mean I would probably take off-the-shelf parts, and there would be wires everywhere, but it would be wearable. The software would look cool. Making it 1 to 2,300, which is how many we had produced, is a completely different game. And like 4 months ago, I had no idea what was involved in that process. And I've read like engineering blogs like Eric, whose name I'm forgetting, the founder of Pebble, and like Repebble, the recent like relaunch of that brand, has like some really great engineering blogs and like available about the process of like flying to Shenzhen and picking components. And so like I'd read it, I'd like followed that stuff, and like I the people who make the GitHub Universe time were incredibly generous with their time and like gave me multiple hours just to like talk to me, and like I wanted to see if they would do it, and they're like, yeah, we don't have enough time to do this, which I probably should have noticed or like listened or learned something from in retrospect.
Should have been a clue, maybe.
Yeah, like if they can't do it on our timeline, how am I supposed to do it on our timeline? And
because you can.
Yeah,
you knew you could, and you did it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So can you sort of step me through what's on the badge? How is the badge constructed?
Yeah, absolutely.
What can you do with the badge?
So I guess let me take my name tags off first, so I can show just some of this gorgeous artwork.
I know the artwork at the top is really nice.
So there's a little Ziggy on it, and Ziggy's on both sides. And let me take it off so it's easier to show. Yeah, so Ziggy's on both sides. Our designer, Kathy, is just so talented here at Temporal, and I am so lucky to get to like, when I send her my dumb ideas, she's like, yeah, let me see what I can do. And like, it's just so helpful and skilled and talented. And like, she put together a first version of this design, not really knowing how circuit boards worked, and I didn't know how circuit board works, and she'd asked me, was there anything special to do? And I'm like, I don't really know. And so she comes up with the first revision, and then we get feedback from our contractor with, this is how you design, this is what you can do with this format. And so like this shiny gold part, that's actually all scratched out. So what they do is they scratch out and they expose the copper layer that is in between the circuit board.
Nice.
And then they spray it with like something that has gold in it to prevent it from rusting. And that's what gets this like color effect. But like traditionally you'd be running electrical signals through those. This backplate is purely decorative, but it looks so cool.
It looks good.
Yeah, and then the white is just a silk screen, and then they can do whatever holes you want. And so yeah, we have the lanyard holes, we have the battery access hole, And then we've got like a lot of really excellent detail around the logos, which is really nice. And it starts as like a name tag because it's going to be underneath your badge. And one of the things is that you wear it like this, and then when you want to play with it, you flip it. And so then the controls are like on my thumbs when they're flipped up. And it uses the gyroscope to move out of the name tag menu. And there's a lot of cool features. We added the ability to like wirelessly transfer contact information earlier today, and that's called booping. We have like a contacts directory of like everyone that I booped. We have a map, a full conference map if you want like a UK subway style, like abstract sort of representation of what a map is relative to like the real layout of Moscone. It's much, much more square and logical than this building actually is. We've got the full schedule on here. You can customize the LEDs, and I'm a little proud of this. Like you can turn it off, you can do a heart, there's a randomizer, there's the game of life. So it's like we built a like Conway's game of life, and we've got some presets where you can, pick your different Conway for all the game of life heads out there, which I don't know if they exist, but I hope they do. There's a Tetris like clone that sends the garbage to the other player over infrared. I got really into figuring out what games would work well if you played two of them at once. So Break Snake is breakout on the top and snake on the bottom, and I will probably do a terrible job of it. But as I move,
oh my goodness,
the snake
Pong.
is also moved. And then there's Flappy Asteroids, which is Flappy Bird on the bottom and asteroids on the top. I think the record so far is 8 seconds. So yeah, I don't know if you can see the Flappy Bird. I'm like not even paying attention to asteroids, and you can see as I jump, it shoots at the same time. So there's a bunch of silly games on here. We got a synthesizer. We have our sponsors. We exposed all of the like developer settings, so like the crash logs. And then, we also got Doom running on it, which I feel like is just like it's just a fun like little footnote. So if you've ever wondered what Doom looks like on a monochrome screen, that's Doom. And, that's all open source. So we pulled the GitHub from id Software, and we got it running on the badge, and like the ammo can is down there, and then like when you get hurt, it'll like deplete your health, and it's really cool. I'm actually really impressed with this.
And I see you've also got like this fun little imagery that's going on with like a heart and
so the heart is your health. So if I get hit, it'll drop, and then this is my so I just I'm running low on bullets, and that's how you see, because the UI is not readable on this screen, and I have no idea how this is going to come through in the camera, but like I can't really tell where I am or what is going on, and I don't know if there's any bad guys in here as well, but we did get it running on the device, which I think is really impressive. And I don't know if you can hear the motor is acting as like a little sound chip, and so it's playing the music, kind of like how the synthesizer. I was going to say,
you can hold it up to your chest, and those
I
watching can hear it at home.
I'm sorry if that was really difficult to normalize for whoever has to edit this video as well, or to the audience at home if that was just awful and ruined your speakers. But yeah, like it does sound. There's a vibration motor in here, and we mostly leverage it as a music device more than anything.
Oh, really?
So as well, which is really fun.
What do you enjoy the most that's built in the software right now?
I will be honest, I am really proud of Flappy Asteroids because of how stupid it is. It's so dumb.
Okay, good to know.
It's so dumb. It is one of the dumbest things I've ever made, but it works so well on here that like it brings me so much joy to see people struggling with it. And like I said, I think the record is like 8 seconds right now, and I said I would give someone a prize if they made it to 30, and I think maybe I set that bar too high. I don't think anyone will be able to play this game for 30 seconds and like survive. I think it's just too much cognitive overload as well, but it is so dumb, and I had such a fun time messing around with it.
I love it. Well, okay, so one question for you.
Yeah.
Would you ever do this again?
I hope so.
Yeah?
Yeah, I hope we get to do it again. I think, we did, like, it was a truly, the gauntlet was the right word, right? Like at least a third of the company came through near the end of the project in the final days to make sure that we delivered on this, right? Like the badges arrived in parts because we ran into some production timeline issues that I discovered when I went into China. And so, I spent most of my time in China solving logistical problems. I was hoping to code.
Well, I was going to say, what had you going over to China to begin with?
I just wanted to be there in case there was a problem so we could respond really quickly, because the process had been at 10 p.m. I would start getting WhatsApp messages from the manufacturer in China.
Yeah.
And I would start responding until I had to go to bed at midnight, 1 a.m. in New York. And our hardware contractors who were based in LA would keep working with them. And so I would wake up and the manufacturer in China, Chris, our account manager, would go home at 4 a.m. in the morning for me. And so I would wake up to a bunch of conversations that had been happening and have to catch up on all of it and respond. And that time zone delay makes it very difficult to problem solve, because the turnaround of information is a day, right? If they don't discover the problem in the first 2 hours of their working day, they will not have an answer on what solution we want until the next day. And as they went into manufacturing, I wanted to be there to just help them
streamline.
Yeah, and I didn't know what problems were going to come up. And like I said, I've never done this before. And so I also kind of just wanted to see it, and I wanted to get photos for our community to see what it's like, and the whole process, and they have all the giant machines, and they're just trays of the empty boards. They make them in sets of 4, and then they snap them apart. So this badge originally had 3 siblings attached to it, and they put it in the machine and it applies the solder, and then there's another machine that picks the components and puts it on the board, and it has to go through 2 of those machines, and then it moves over and the solder gets melted on, so it hits all the parts, and it goes through an X-ray to see if they find any issues. There's a machine learning algorithm that sees if it can identify any issues, and then a human being actually looks at the thing and reviews it. And then it gets passed on to a soldering station where the joystick is someone will wire in, just push them through because it's too big for the pick and place. But someone will put all of these on and then hand it to someone else who will solder them. And I solder frequently enough. That guy solders so fast. I didn't even realize he'd started by the time he'd finished for the first one that I saw him do. They have it down there. And then, there's a bunch of other finishing steps. They plug in the ribbon cable for the screen. And then there's a QA process where they check every badge. And we had to build a QA firmware for them to validate all of the things that we expected the badge to do. So there's a little tester where it checks the joystick works. Did all the lights turn on? Did the screen turn on? Did the IR transmitters turn on? Did they receive something through the receiver in the bottom? Does power work? Will it charge the battery if you plug a thing in? Will it still stay on when you unplug it? To validate the power circuitry on the back. Yeah, there was just so much testing that we need to do. We actually ended up translating the firmware from English into Chinese while we were there, because I was just watching the QA guy who was helping us and showing us, and he didn't speak any English, and we were leveraging translate apps pretty aggressively to communicate with each other. And so I just spoke to our hardware guy and I was like, can we just put this in Chinese? And we went and did it, and he went from taking 5 minutes aboard to 10 seconds. And
wow.
That was something I don't think we would have been able to do nearly fast enough for them had we been off-site. And the fact that we were on-site, we were able to see it and realize, this is
nice.
Too difficult for them. They let's work smarter, not harder, and let's make this easier for them.
So you had also said you might start, you thought you would have time to code.
Yeah.
But you didn't have a chance to code because you were having to do a lot more with the QA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I figured we would do something like tuning the LED scanner or the LED thing, because I actually don't know how far this goes and how it deals when you have 100 of them firing off in the same room. And I still don't know what happens in that situation. And I wanted to tune it and figure that out, because this would have been the first time I would have had contact with 100 of these things. Yeah. Ended up doing production stuff the entire time.
So when you were in China and you were helping to make sure this is all ready to go, one of the things I know you probably could have had attached to this was the batteries. That had to be separate, because I know there's a lot of care around making sure batteries are not going to suddenly go go on fire in a.
Yeah. Shipping batteries is really difficult. And so my fear was that the batteries would be one of the problems that would get us caught up. And so I asked them maybe the second day I was there to just send the batteries straight away.
Okay.
And so they did. And like the batteries got stuck in customs for about 6 days and they arrived. And like, it's good that I did that because I think if we'd sent everything fully assembled, it wouldn't have arrived on time.
That's fair.
Yeah. And like,
well, I'm glad that the batteries made it. And then the parts were sent separately. Meanwhile, I know you were working on the software and you came back. Do you want to talk in terms of that process of getting them back and starting to get those assembled?
I mean, a lot of it is just waiting for international shipping and then like hoping customs doesn't pull you out. And, you know, these badges have a value to them, and then you multiply that value by 2,300, and you're above the $2,000 threshold that like usually is like customs doesn't look at. So like I had to call our general counsel and be like, hey, can we give DHL power of attorney for Temporal? And then my CMO had to reach out. We have a channel internally in our Slack that's called Text from Max, where it's all the screenshots of the fishers that try and like pretend to be our CEO or our CTO and try and like convince attendees to or employees to give us personal data. And we just kind of posted it in this channel and be like, they laugh at it. And I'm like, I feel like I just sent one of those to our general counsel where I'm like, hey, can we give DHL power of attorney over us for us on behalf of clearing U.S. Customs? And that was a very odd thing to do that I, in retrospect, that makes sense that we would have to have a solution to that. And instead I kind of just discovered it in China when I was like talking to them about shipping and how that worked, and they're like, "Yeah, like this is a thing you might encounter and might have to resolve." And so it was like, great. Like, how do we get things together fast enough? And yeah, so part of the decision was to send it separately, send it unassembled, and we manufactured it here on site at Replay as well. And so we had all of our employees, well, not all of them, but like a huge chunk of the Temporal staff like showed out, and it was a little party in the room.
It was.
Like we had music going, and like the camaraderie was like amazing. And I think we started at like 7 and we were done by midnight. There were just so many people there to like put these things together. And so like I still can't believe like so many of our coworkers showed up. I thought we'd have like 10 people and we would be there until like the next day, and like everyone, like it was incredible.
There's a lot of rallying. We even had some of our Constellation members show up. Even.
Our community members showed up. Like we had a few partners and spouses. We had a dog.
We did have a dog.
Like it was really incredible. We were not in a big enough room for how many people were there.
And how did we launch it? How did it show up at Replay?
Yeah, so this was a really fun thing that we did. Our CEO did the like, tech one more thing where he ends the keynote with like, and one more thing, we've built this hackable badge and we're going to hand you one as you walk out of the keynote. And we have this gorgeous tunnel that our design team got together and our brand team put together, and all of the attendees walk out of this like this beautiful looking tunnel, and there's just like lines of Temporalites with their badges, handing it to them and like giving it to them. And like, it just like seeing how happy people were to receive these, like made all of the difficulty and the trouble of doing something like this worth it. Like I essentially have been done with Replay since about 10:30 in the morning, because that's about half an hour after the keynote wrapped, when I was done, like when all the attendees were out of the room and had a badge and were just playing with it. And I've just been walking around Replay for the rest of it, watching people
play with
the badges.
And is there something in particular that was your favorite thing to see, or favorite things to see with how they're using the badge?
I do have something funny that I don't know if it's my favorite thing, but it is a funny anecdote, which is it is remarkable how many people have walked into walls because they are too focused on something in the badge that they don't realize that there is a wall back there. I don't know if you remember when like smartphones first came out.
Oh yeah.
Like how addicted, at least for my like I think I was in my teenage years at that point. And, like we were all addicted to it, and like definitely we were walking into walls because we were paying too much attention to our phones. And that phenomenon repeated itself like 20 years later here at Replay with these badges. People are just like mucking about with them and smack, and it's been very funny every time, and luckily no one has gotten hurt like at all, but it is still very silly. Like it's just a monochrome one color screen, and we're able to pull people's attention that much that like they're enjoying it that much that we probably need to tell them to sit down. So,
Possibly need to recommend, or better yet, maybe even have a session where everybody just hangs out and hacks on the badge together. If somebody was going to do this on their own, or not on their own, but if somebody was, had never done a badge like this before for their own event, are there specific things you'd recommend that they keep in mind or things they should do?
I would definitely recommend to whatever you think your timeline is, probably triple it. So maybe that's just a problem for me, but like, definitely give yourself enough time. Like we're doing this with the full resources of Temporal behind us. And like, I do not think I could have done this by myself. And so like, I don't really know how to give advice unless you're like working in like a large, we're a Series D tech company, right? Like we have Series D tech company resources, and that isn't just money, that is talent, right? Like that is our design team. That is our DevRel team who has stepped up to like, we gave our DevRel team all developer kits, and Ian like has gone wild with that and like has built so much stuff to integrate into the badge. And like our security team had to get involved to figure out, how do we make sure that like how much PII can we put on here? And like, how do we make sure that if we do put PII on here, like it's secure? And the place we came to is that the chip that we selected, the ESP32, is not secure enough to do PII. And so like, we had to cut some features there. And yeah, Alex Tideman from our engineering team, I actually don't even know what Alex's real job is. He's just been helping get this over the line. I know he's an engineering manager, but I couldn't tell you for what. And he's just been like, giving us code reviews, making sure that things are ready. Dave from the marketing department who works on Temp, like he made sure all of our documentation and our pages look good, because we ended up building a check-in app. We built a swag pickup app. We built the registration. We built the ticket sales. And like Dave made all of that look good. And Tideman like made sure that like the temporal infrastructure was configured correctly as well. And like made it so Ian and I could just worry about like, how do we ship features and like get stuff done? So like Ian built our swag pickup. I built the first version of check-in and our lead scanner that was getting used across the conference. And there's all this technology that we got to do as part of the badge. And even though it doesn't look like it's directly connected to the badge, just like so many people have been involved to make this work and to feel cohesive, that it's really, really nice.
It takes a village.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So like have teammates that you have your back is, I guess, the real advice is like, don't do it alone. Find a team like that will have your back and will step up in those like horrible situations where you need people to step up, and they did. And like, I am so thankful that they did. I am a little regretful that I had to ask for it, but the last thing I wanted, pre-replay was all of us in a room screwing things in, but like they came out and that was incredible. So,
we kept saying it was a team bonding experience at another level. So, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know how HR would feel about repeating this as a bonding exercise for us. But maybe we'll do it again next year, or maybe I will do a better job of time management and we can get these things done soon enough that we don't have to ask people to step up, and I can just feel comfortable knowing that they would if we need them, but I didn't need to ask. And that I think would be my sweet spot here, because I'm like I said, I can't express how thankful I am to our coworkers for like showing up for this crazy project that we did. Like
that you did. You got this done.
We did.
Correct. We did. And
I was just
you led the charge.
Yeah,
you led the charge.
That.
You kicked it off.
I'll accept
and
that.
It landed because of a team.
Yeah.
And you started it.
Yeah, I'll accept
and we
that.
all finished it.
I'll accept that, but I can't talk about this project without
I respect that.
everyone involved in it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I'll accept that I kicked it off, but like...
You kicked it off and it landed, and it was a team effort.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, you were in there, I think, with us as well, like screwing things in or attaching the joysticks. We haven't even talked about the joysticks.
There was so many of us.
Yeah.
It was great.
We haven't even talked about the joysticks. These things rotate. I don't know if you know, but the Temporal logo has a proper up direction. It is that way. Because they rotate, we made sure to get joysticks that rotate so you can make sure it's always the right way up regardless of the orientation. And like, that was an intentional design choice that we made. And people were in there plugging these things in, and like they had the temporal mark embossed into their thumb by the end of it, and it was a crazy experience. And I do really hope I get to do something like this again. Because I have ideas for next year that I think are gonna be really cool.
Any specific ideas you were up for sharing?
Yeah, so one of the things I really, really wanted to do was get Temporal running on the badge, and we did. One of our new hires, Edward, who joined our team, saw me give a demo of the previous version of this in his first week at an engineering showcase, and was like, yeah, I can get Temporal running on it. And he just spent the weekend hacking away. He's on our SDK team, and he specialized in Rust. And he managed to get our Rust SDK running on it authentically. Like we were running activities and workflows off of this device in Rust. We just ran out of time to like get it. Like Edward has been working on this with me a month and a half ago. Edward has been at Temporal for a month and a half, and has been such a critical part of this, and is the reason our build system works. We built a build system for flashing these in bulk that uses Temporal, and there's some weird craziness with USB allocation where the ports reassign themselves, and you have to deal with that in the flashing process because I have a validation step that confirms that they're done correctly, and so you have to catch the port as it changes and know which port it's updated to because there are 32 of them plugged in at the same time, and Edward figured that out, and but yeah, if I'd managed to get Temporal running on it 3 months ago, we would have done it then. Edward just didn't start working for us until a month ago and pulled it off. But now we know we can do that, and we'll do that next year.
Before we wrap up, one question I have, and I want to make sure you get to say everything you need to say, is one, what would Temporal do for what's currently running on the badge that would make it better right now?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, we're fully open sourcing the entire thing.
Yep.
And we have a doc site up that Brian on our docs team has taken all of the things that I've had the AIs help me make and document and turned it into something that's meets our standards of docs quality, and that's at badge.temporal.io, and that was made by folks on our team, that website, and yeah, so you can get started there,
But for putting Temporal on this, how would that help and make this better?
Yeah, I would love it to connect to those conference systems a little more.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to do is beam my contact info across, and we have that working over infrared. But if you want to do something a little more intense with that, we could have the infrared transmit the machine ID, and then it does a lookup that's a standalone activity or something that just grabs the data from the database. What we would do with workers running on this, I don't actually know. I haven't thought of that yet. But my pie in the sky idea is I want 2,000 workers that are doing something during the keynote next year, that connect to Temporal Cloud and make some sort of mini supercomputer or something.
Okay.
And I think we can pull that off. I just we'll have to see.
Find out.
We'll have to find out and see if we can do it. So
well, before we close out, anything else that you wanted to share about the badge, about the whole experience?
Yeah, no, this has been one of the most professionally difficult projects of my life, and also one of the most professionally rewarding projects of my career. And we have an amazing team here. I am so professionally satisfied and love working here for the amount of trust and responsibility I was given to try something like this, and just how much my coworkers stepped up. And I just can't stop saying thank you for the trust and the resourcing and the time and the physical labor that everyone has given to making sure our attendees had this really cool thing. And just the smiles on all of those attendees' faces are because of the sweat and labor that Temporalites have put into this. And I just can't thank them enough. And I just can't stop smiling as I walk around the event watching people play with these. This has been truly, truly a lovely project. An incredibly difficult project, but a really lovely project at the same time.
It's really wonderful what you've accomplished with this. Seriously, what the team has accomplished
Thank
with
you.
this.
Thank you.
What everybody has accomplished.
Yeah.
All right, Shai, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for making Replay so special.
Yeah, for sure. And make sure that if folks want to see how we launched it, hopefully the keynote recording is up by the time this recording is up, and you can go check out that keynote and see it get announced live on stage, and see the response and the people walking through the tunnel. And I think it's just a really special thing that we managed to pull off, and I hope people enjoy it.
I have no doubt they will, and they'll also get to go to the GitHub repo and play with the code.
Yeah, and maybe if you go to Replay 27, you'll have one of these yourselves. If you're feeling a little bit of FOMO, I'm sure we will put the Replay 27 website up at some point. So keep an eye for that. Yeah, tomorrow. So keep an eye out for it.
Now you're gonna go get some sleep.
Yes, absolutely. So I know I'm just gonna wander around and try and stop people from walking into walls as they play Flappy Asteroids. So
all right, well, have a good rest of your
pleasure.
replay.
Yeah, thank you so much.